Alright, we are live, ladies and germs. Well, needless to say, this was a very interesting ROVAL race this time around. Kind of saw a tale of two races. Like, the first half of the race was pretty much a nothing burger, not really much happening. But then, of course, once the second half got underway, was when shit started to go down. And there was one person in particular in this field that learned karma is a bitch. And we're going to be going full depth into that one because there's going to be a lot to say about that. But before we get into all that, let's do our intro as per the usual. Saddle up, lock and load. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? It's the Packer Man, and welcome to tonight's edition of The Fuel, where tonight we're going to be reviewing a very, very interesting race. It was the fourth ever edition of the Charlotte Road Course race and the Bank of America ROVAL 400, the final road course event of 2021. 7 in total this year. Pretty crazy. It's our 118th episode of The Fuel. And what an interesting race this was. Where do we even begin? Where do we even begin with this? I mean, just absolute craziness, particularly in the second half of this race. You had playoff drivers having all sorts of issues, mechanical problems and all that jazz. Certain playoff drivers getting mad at each other, and all this other stuff. But when it's all said and done, the man who ends up in victory lane is none other than Kyle Larson. Was not an easy win for him though, because he had to overcome an alternator problem early in the race, and thankfully in his case it wasn't an internal problem with the alternator. The alternator belt actually got knocked off, probably from like a piece of debris or something like that, and that's where he had his issue. Alex Bowman had a similar issue, but the belt was still on his car, so it was more than likely the alternator itself, whereas in Larson's case it was the alternator belt. And once they got that put on, she was on. It was coming towards the front. And as a result, Larson gets his 7th win of 2021. At certain points during this race, he was actually below the cut line. Like, that's how serious this problem was for Larson. Man who has so many playoff points right now, it's not even crazy, or it's not even funny. And he was in danger of actually missing the round of 8. Of course, I would have completely torn this playoff format a brand new asshole, if that were the case, because, I mean, y'all know I can't fucking stand this playoff format. But with Larson's win, he actually becomes the first driver ever to win 3 road course races in the same season. Of course, it's not an easy feat to accomplish, considering that most of the time, before the last couple years, the Cup Series only had 2 road course races, and then they went to 3 with the addition of the ROVAL, and this season we went up all the way up to 7 road circuits. So there's that. Of course, it'll drop back down to 6 since they're not going back to the Daytona road course. They're going to try to go back to the Auto Club Speedway in 2022. Cat, don't start. No. 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 You want to say hi? Say hi, Kitty. Come on, say hi. Well. Oh, now that you have a microphone in your face, you don't want to say hi? Well. Kitty. Silly cats. Anyways. But, we're basically going back to all the same road courses next year, minus the Daytona road course, obviously, because that was put in for this year due to the fact that they couldn't go to the Auto Club Speedway. So there's that. But let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, this has come up once again. This is going to be the main topic of discussion for this episode. The Elliott Harvick feud, which was pretty much reignited from this race, because I'm just going to go ahead and go right to it. Midway through stage 3, Kevin Harvick was behind Chase Elliott, and as they were getting ready to come out of the infield section, Harvick decided to take it on himself to punt Chase Elliott into the outside wall, completely destroying the back end of Elliott's car and knocking basically the deck lid off, the rear spoiler, you name it. And when Chase came out of the infield section, he basically had no control over his car because, you know, no rear spoiler, and he ended up spinning out, and he actually collected Cole Custer. It was obvious, especially if you listen to the onboard, he gassed it up going into that turn. So it was pretty obvious that he was intending on ending Chase Elliott's championship hopes right then and there. And obviously, you know, he did this in retaliation for what happened at Bristol. Here's the problem, though. What happened at Bristol with Elliott basically, you know, costing Harvick the win? The difference here is that Elliott didn't try to, quote-unquote, wreck Kevin Harvick. Now, he took a swipe at him down the backstretch, but he didn't actually, you know, wreck him. Whereas in this case, Harvick decided to take it upon himself to wreck Chase Elliott. And it was obvious that it was intentional. Because, I mean, Harvick, you know, and here's the thing that fucking pisses me off about Kevin Harvick. He actually made a statement saying that talking with Chase Elliott was like talking to a 9-year-old. Which I find kind of ironic, considering that this guy has been throwing temper tantrums ever since that fucking Bristol race. So, you know, the fact, you know, that he decided to do this shit, you know, after saying, you know, making those comments and all that stuff, I mean, it just makes you look like a hypocritical fuck. But it became more than that, though. Harvick is nothing but a fucking scumbag. You know, and I've despised Harvick for years. Even before what happened in 2015, I despised the guy. And then 2015 just took it way over the cliff. And the last month or so has reaffirmed why I can't stand this motherfucker. This guy is a fucking scumbag. You know, wrecking Chase Elliott intentionally like that is you know, that's not how you handle shit, you know, in this case. I mean, what Chase did at Bristol was unacceptable, but it should not have been raised to this level. Okay, what Chase did at Bristol was not cool, but it did not warrant being wrecked like that intentionally. Okay, that was fucking bullshit. And just for the record, I am not a Chase Elliott fan by any stretch of the imagination, and I openly criticized Elliott for what he did at Bristol. Because I don't believe in that shit. And then for Harvick to do this shit, I mean, it just makes him look like a scumbag. And for some people that might say, well, you would be happy if Elliott did the same thing. No, I wouldn't. Even though I don't fucking like Harvick, I don't want to see that type of shit in my fucking racing. Okay, that's not what I signed up for this shit for. I mean, if I wanted to see shit like this, I'd go to a fucking demolition derby. Okay, I watch NASCAR for the fucking side-by-side racing. Okay? The action that stems from that. Not this fucking beating and banging, wrecking each other, wreckfest style bullshit. That's not what I signed up for when it comes to my NASCAR coverage. But, this would come back to bite Harvick in the ass, because Chase Elliott's crew was actually able to get the deck lid back on, and there were some questions as to whether or not he needed the rear bumper cover on it. But as it turned out, on road courses, they don't need the rear bumper cover. It's more of a safety issue at like the super speedways and stuff like that. But when that one caution came out, when the bumper cover came off, that basically allowed Elliott to get 4 fresh tires, adjustments, and all that other stuff, and it closed him back to the back of the field. And as it turned out, he was actually faster than some of the cars in front of him, including Harvick, who he actually started running down. And I'm pretty sure Harvick's spotter basically told him, hey, be careful, Elliott's coming up behind you. And I'm pretty sure on the front stretch he took a look in the mirror to see where Elliott was, and he basically took his eye off the ball. And he locked up the brakes going into the first turn, the heartburn turn, and completely smashed the turn 1 wall. And I'm not going to lie, I audibly laughed when he did that. Now obviously, I don't want, you know, any drivers, regardless of how I feel about them, to be injured in any way. So I was glad for the fact that he was able to get out of the car. You know, there were some Chase Elliott fans, there was one that tweeted, he got out of the car, should have killed his ass. You know, it's like, look, trust me, I am not a fan of Kevin Harvick whatsoever, but if there's one thing I won't do, is wish death or serious injury on any drivers. I mean, that's just fucking stupid shit. Okay, I don't want him to advance to the next round. I don't want him to win another race. But what I also don't want is for him to be seriously injured or killed. Okay, that's not what I want. And whoever wishes for that shit is, you know, I have to wonder if you're legitimately insane or not. I mean, you have to be if you wish that type of shit on a driver who you don't even fucking know personally. As I say, that as I, you know, despise Kevin Harvick, but I despise Kevin Harvick because of his fucking actions on the racetrack and his general attitude. I don't need to meet the guy, you know, to dislike him for some of the dumb shit that he's done. And he has done a lot of dumb shit in his career. And it's now coming back to the forefront with some of the dumb shit that he's been doing recently, including today. But, as the title of the episode is, Karma is a bitch! Ain't it, Harvick? You thought you could get away with yet another bullshit move like you did in 2015? And karma finally came back and bit you right in the fucking ass. And I'm not gonna lie, I fucking loved it when you went out of that race. Like I said, I'm glad that you got out of the car unhurt. But one thing I was glad for was the fact that you were not moving on to the fucking round of 8. It was so satisfying. Because you don't deserve any fucking thing from this point forward. I hope you never win another race. I hope you never win another championship. Hell, I hope you never make the fucking playoffs ever again. And honestly, the day you retire will be a day of great joy for me. Because, quite frankly, I cannot fucking stand you for anything you've done. Shit like we saw today is the reason why I cannot support this motherfucker, past, present, or future. And the fact that Elliott made it to the next round and not him, that made it even sweeter. And like I said, I'm not a Chase Elliott fan whatsoever. And the fact that Elliott made it in and Harvick did not, that was the icing on the cake. But with all that out of the way, since there isn't really much in the way of news, let's go ahead and get into this review. Did I get my notes ready? Alright, so the 4th ever edition of the Bank of America ROVAL 400. Hard to believe it's already been 4. We've already had this, road course for 4 years now. And it seems like each and every time there's always been some craziness involved with it. 109 laps for the race. The stages broke down. 25 laps for stages 1 and 2, with 59 laps for stage 3. Fuel window was somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 laps, somewhere right around there. So stage number 1 was 25 laps. Denny Hamlin started from the pole. Good clean start by everybody, which was a bit of a surprise considering how hectic turn 1 can be. Hamlin leads lap 1. Logano gets by Keselowski for 2nd at the front stretch chicane. Truex loses 2 spots to Elliott and Larson. Eric Almirola gets spun by Buescher at the backstretch chicane. Many drivers come in before the competition caution, which was on lap 10 for fresh tires, but the rule is you cannot fuel the car until after the competition caution. But tires were still a big deal. Hamlin pits from the lead the next time around. Christopher Bell was caught speeding on pit road. Then we had our first caution on lap 11, competition caution of course. Several drivers come in for tires and fuel at this point. Logano leads on the restart. Blaney gets the lead on the restart, which was a theme during this race. Not a whole lot of pure lead changes in this race. I mean, once somebody got out front, they pretty much stayed out front for that run. Keselowski spins in the backstretch after contact with Alex Bowman. Of course, that was at the chicane as well. Hamlin gets by Larson for 4th with the fresher tires. We had caution number 2 on lap 20 when Ryan Newman loses the right rear tire in oval turn 4 and smacks the wall. It looked like there was some contact in the infield between him and someone else that might have cut the tire down, but we couldn't really tell. Most of the field comes in for service. Ryan Blaney leads on the restart. Allmendinger, who won the Xfinity race yesterday and is pretty much undefeated in the Xfinity Series at the ROVAL. He's won all 3 appearances in the last 3 years in the Xfinity Series. He leads on the restart. He gets the lead on the restart in the infield section. As it turned out, it was reported that Hamlin was also caught speeding on pit road under that caution. Ryan Preece gets spun at the front stretch chicane. Elliott gets by Blaney for 2nd and challenges Allmendinger for the lead on the last lap of stage 1 and was able to pull it off surprisingly enough. But I mean, you have two road course ringers in this case. Chase Elliott's been known as the road course king, at least until this year. Larson seems to have taken that title away. But we have our one and only pure lead change on lap 25, when Chase Elliott gets the lead and wins stage number 1 as a result. Yep, pretty much, if you got out front on a restart, you weren't going to be passed. That was pretty much the thing. All the drivers who didn't pit under the previous yellows pit under this break. So we come to stage number 2, which is 25 laps as well. Allmendinger leads on the start of stage 2. Kyle Busch gets the lead on the restart though, with a good run. Byron moves up to second and was trying to catch Busch for the lead. Of course, he was in a must-win situation. And it was at this point that both Bowman and Larson started reporting voltage issues, and both were having alternator problems. Bowman was the alternator itself, as I reported earlier, but with Larson, it was actually the alternator belt that was knocked off. But they couldn't get it fixed until the end of this stage. Caution number 3 on lap 33. Chase Briscoe gets cleaned out by Ricky Stenhouse at the front stretch chicane, which pretty much created a wall of smoke. You couldn't really see, so NASCAR threw the caution. And it was under this yellow that the crew raised the hood and saw that the alternator belt was knocked off the car. But they didn't really have time to fix it at the moment, so they just put a fresh battery in and let them off, and they actually went green the rest of the way to the end of the stage. Kyle Busch led on the restarts. Byron comes in on lap 48, and a load of others follow him in. Elliott gets by Harvick for second in turn 1 on the last lap of stage 2, and Kyle Busch wins stage number 2. And Larson also finished 6th in this stage, earning 5 very critical points at this point, because there were points during this run where he was actually below the cut line. Yeah. You wouldn't think it, considering the outcome of this race, but yeah, at certain points during this race, he was on the verge of not making it to the round of 8. So now we come to stage 3, 59 laps, and this is when the shit really started to hit the fan. William Byron leads the start at stage 3. Larson tries to charge up through the field, and then we get the moment I was alluding to earlier. The 4th caution on lap 55, when Kevin Harvick dumps Elliott coming out of the infield, and Elliott smashes the rear of the car, and with the rear spoiler knocked all wobbly and shit, he gets loose and spins in the first turn of the oval and collects Cole Custer. And it was at this point I wrote down in my notes, Harvick is a fucking douchebag. Oh, but as I talked about before, karma was coming back to bite him in the ass. Byron leads on the restarts. Allmendinger was slow on the apron coming out of the backstretch chicane, and it was reported that he had engine failure, so tough break for him. Of course, he won earlier this year at the Indianapolis Road Course, was hoping to duplicate that today, but yep, engine failure would put Allmendinger out. Hamlin ends up missing the backstretch chicane and has to stop on the front stretch. That's basically the rule. If you miss one of the 2 chicanes, you have to come to a complete stop, and then you can keep going as a penalty for basically cutting the track. Because in the chicanes, they laid these blue curbs, and basically your right side tires or left side tires, depending on which turn you're going through, they have to basically be touching that blue curb to not be considered cutting the track. So that's how they determine that. Reddick up to second, 3.2 seconds behind William Byron. Reddick had a good car today, and he had a shot to win this race. Green flag pit stops begin on lap 76. Byron and Reddick pit from first and second on the next lap. Hamlin was playing the long game, thinking that fresh tires would be the better choice. Finally pits on lap 81. Byron cycles back with the lead, 1.3 seconds ahead of Reddick. Larson back up to 6th. It was safe to say at this point that the alternator issue was fixed. And I'm pretty sure Byron would have just preferred this race to run out to the end, because he was holding Reddick at bay pretty good, and the rest of the field was nowhere in sight. So I'm pretty sure Byron would have loved to see this race go green the rest of the way. But then the caution came out, our fifth one on lap 86, when it was a debris caution, when Chase Elliott's bumper cover came off. It had come loose and it had been flapping around for a while, and then it finally came off, so it was a debris caution. A large majority of the field comes in for service, and Hamlin stays out and leads on the restart. Reddick bull rushes up to second. He went by Byron, who he was chasing, and was now trying to chase down Hamlin. Kez gets spun at the backstretch chicane again, but this time it was more of a three-wide shenagle. We had a four-car battle for the win between Hamlin, Byron, Larson, and Reddick. And then going into the backstretch chicane, Reddick nudges Byron as Larson is on the inside of both of them. And that causes Byron to miss the backstretch chicane, so he had to come to a stop. Some people were thinking that he didn't come to a full stop, which didn't look like he did, but NASCAR was like, well, he got nudged in there, so, you know, he did slow down. It's basically a crawl, so we'll allow it. I mean, that's at NASCAR's discretion. So Larson was now up to second and was now chasing Hamlin. Then we had our sixth caution on lap 93. There was a bit of a shenagle in the infield section when Joey Hand and Corey LaJoie were basically spun and made hard contact with the wall in turn 2, which put some debris on the racetrack. Then we had Hamlin leading on the restart. Larson gets a good run in oval 1 and 2 for the race lead, but Hamlin was able to hold him off. Kurt Busch misses the front stretch chicane and has to stop before he can keep going. Reddick gets by Larson, moves up to second, and is now challenging Hamlin for the lead. Chris Buescher at this point was up to fourth and was not far behind the leaders. Then Larson made a great move underneath of Reddick for second coming out of the infield. And then the seventh caution on lap 98. Harvick locks it up going into turn 1 and pounds the wall, completely destroying the front of his car and knocking him out of the race and out of the playoffs. Oh, karma is a bitch, as I've said before. And as I've said before as well, very satisfying. So I don't know if I made this clear or not, but I can't stand Harvick. So now we come to the final restart of the day. Hamlin leads on this restart, but Larson gets a great run to the infield section. Of course, he has a strong car, and it's fixed, and he has fresher tires than Hamlin. So he was able to take the lead in the infield section from Hamlin. And then with the older tires against the newer tires, Hamlin just started getting swarmed by everybody. Freaking fly or something. That was annoying. Logano gets big front end damage from a jam up, but was able to keep going. Byron was trying to charge hard towards the front. He was back up to third, and he was actually not that far behind Larson. So he still had a shot. So it was a 3-car fight for the win between Larson, Reddick, and Byron with 6 laps to go. Truex spins in the backstretch chicane after contact with Joey Hand, who, by the way, was driving for Rick Ware Racing in this race. So that put Truex on the bubble now in the 8th position. Of course, the only way he would have been knocked out is if Byron would have won. But Byron spins in the infield section with 2 laps to go, trying to push hard, and ends up damaging the front of his car. And that was pretty much it. Kyle Larson recovers from an alternator problem to win at the ROVAL, his 7th win of the season and the 13th victory of his career. I love the quote that Chase Elliott made afterwards. He said something to the effect of, you know, I wish him a happy off season and a Merry Christmas, or something of that nature. I'm just going to leave it at that. Alright, so let's do some statistics here. We actually had 15 overall lead changes in this race, which is pretty good for a road course race. Most of them were on restarts or during the exchange of pit stops, which explains why we just had the 1 pure lead change, which isn't really that big of a surprise. I mean, road courses, it can be kind of hard to pass, but that can also result in pretty damn good racing in that aspect. Unfortunately, this race also saw 7 caution flags, so a pretty messy event, to say the least. And there were 3,197 green flag passes, which averages out to 35.1 per green flag lap, so that's actually a pretty good stat as well. But, you know, the lack of purely changes and high number of cautions, it is going to bring this race down a little wee bit, but it's not going to affect it too much. It's just, in my opinion, this was still a very solid road course race, even though the first half was kind of eh. The second half, I think, made up for it despite the high number of cautions. So, without further ado, race results. Kyle Larson with the win, unbelievably, after having an alternator issue. Tyler Reddick comes home in second yet again, still looking for that first career win. It's going to come sooner or later. I mean, you can't be finishing second this many times and not win, you know what I mean? Chris Buescher with a great run, coming home in third. Kyle Busch quietly in the 4th position. I think he won stage 2 as well. Yeah, not really a whole lot happened in stage 2. Or no, he didn't win stage 2. Who won stage 2? I don't remember. Fuck. Whatever. Doesn't really matter at this point. Denny Hamlin came home in 5th. Matt DiBenedetto in 6th after starting 30th. Nice job there. Logano with front end damage came home in 7th. Christopher Bell in 8th. Ryan Blaney in 9th. And Alex Bowman, despite his alternator issues, came home in 10th. But it would not be enough for Bowman to advance. I think he needed to win the race regardless. So here's how the points looked at the end of the round of 12. As you can see, the red box indicates who is not moving on to the round of 8. Denny Hamlin, of course, this is the overall points for the round, but he was moving on regardless because he won at Las Vegas. And Larson is moving on officially by win as well. He would have been on points regardless as well, considering where he was. But he ended up winning the race. Very similar circumstances in terms of the round of 16 and round of 12. Hamlin won the first race of the round of 16, and Larson won the final race of the round of 16. And now here in the round of 12, Hamlin won at Las Vegas, the first race of the round of 12, and then Larson turns around and wins the final race of the round of 12. I'm sensing a theme here. But another theme in this season of parody is that it's looking like it's going to be Hamlin versus Larson for this championship. And neither driver has a cup title to their credit. And based on how this playoff run is going, despite Larson's ups and downs, he's been able to recover very nicely. And with the playoff points he has in hand, it would be a big surprise if he doesn't make the championship 4. Of course, we said that about Harvick last year. And another thing I think people are going to say about, Harvick, spinning Elliott out is like, how is it different from what happened with Kyle Busch last year at Martinsville? It was 2 completely different situations, okay? The thing with Kevin Harvick spinning Kyle Busch last year at Martinsville in the final lap was it had nothing to do with a beef or a rivalry or anything like that. Even though he had problems with Kyle Busch in the past, they didn't really have any issues at all during that season. It was just the fact that Harvick just needed one more position to qualify for the championship 4, and the guy who happened to be in front of him for that final spot was Kyle Busch. So he tried to spin him out to get that final spot and lock himself into the championship 4. It's a completely different scenario than intentionally wrecking someone because you just fucking hate their guts. Which is exactly what happened today, and karma ended up biting him in the ass. So there's that. But then you see the rest who made it in on points. Logano in 3rd, Ryan Blaney 4th, Kyle Busch 5th, Chase Elliott 6th, despite having the ass end of his car completely ripped to shreds. Brad Keselowski 7th, and Martin Truex Jr. Rounds out the field for the round of 8. That's 3 JGR cars, 3 Penske cars, and 2 Hendrick Motorsports cars. Basically the big three of NASCAR Cup Series teams. And then you look at the bottom four. Harvick eliminated. I mean, you know, all the bullshit aside, I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, I didn't really expect Harvick to make it that far in the playoff, considering, you know, he wasn't up to the standard that he set for himself last year with 9 wins. And then this year he hasn't won at all, and even though he's had top 10 finishes, he hasn't really looked that strong. I mean, SHR as a whole hasn't really looked that good. The only win they've had so far this year was Eric Almirola at New Hampshire, and that was lightning in a bottle. But Christopher Bell, William Byron, Alex Bowman, I mean, it is what it is. They're still young drivers. They're going to be in this series for a long time to come. So they're going to get more opportunities to race for championships. So, with that out of the way, this is what the playoff leaderboard will be for the round of 8 entering Texas next week. And the round of 8 consists of Texas, Kansas, and Martinsville. So Larson has 65 playoff points going into the round of 8. You have Denny Hamlin at 30, Martin Truex Jr. at 29, Ryan Blaney at 24, and those are your 4 front runners so far, which means on the outside looking in at the moment, although they're not that far behind, Kyle Busch with 23, Chase Elliott with 22, Joey Logano with 13, and Brad Keselowski with 8 points. And the wins at this point get even more important, because the win will lock you into the championship 4. Who's going to make it in? Well, have to tune in and find out. But 4 races remain in the 2021 season. We are fast approaching the end of the racing season. Unreal. As for my final rating for the Bank of America ROVAL 400, really hard to rate this one. The first half of the race was just kind of eh. Second race really started picking things up, but it really got messy with all the cautions, you know, and the stupid bullshit with Harvick and, you know, and all that other stuff. But when the racing was on in the second half, the racing was actually pretty solid. So I'm not going to bang this race too much. So, and it was pretty enjoyable for the most part. So, my final rating for the Bank of America ROVAL 400, I'll give it a 7 on the fuel gauge. Nothing too spectacular, but I still thought it was solid overall. And that's my feeling on that. And it continues what has been a pretty enjoyable playoff run, to be honest. I mean, the last 2 or 3 months, there's been hardly any races, other than maybe Vegas, that have really sucked. So, there you go. And like I said, Harvick, Byron, Bowman, and Bell have all been eliminated from the playoffs. Four races remain before we crown the 2021 Cup champion. It'll be interesting to see, to say the least, because we've got a wide variety of different drivers that are going to be going for this championship. Some of which are going for their first title. When you look at this list of 8, Brad Keselowski is a former champion, Logano is a former champion, Chase Elliott's the defending champion, Kyle Busch is a 2-time champion, Martin Truex Jr. is a former champion. So we have 3 drivers in this field of 8 that have never won the championship. Ryan Blaney, well, I don't think he's even gotten this far in the playoff before. This as far as I can tell. I don't remember how far he's gotten in his career, but he certainly got a shot now. And then of course you have the top 2 guys who I mean, this championship I think is going to come down to those 2, based on what we've seen so far in the playoff. Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin. And I fully expect Hamlin to win at Texas and then Larson to win at Martinsville, because that's the trend that's going on right now. But that is going to do it for today's edition of The Fuel. Didn't mean to do that. As far as Formula 1, I didn't get to watch the race today. but I will watch it at some point during the week, and I'll give my review on that at some point. But just 4 races remain in the Cup Series season, and 6 races remain in Formula One. And that season stretches into December, which is just stupid, but, you know, it is what it is. But that's going to do it for tonight's edition of The Fuel. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, when we begin the round of 8 at Texas, this is the Packerman signing out. See you later.
Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you rats!